your team.
He's gonna speak today, though.
Yeah, won't be the first or last time we see you, I think. And as several of you who I've had a chance to talk to expressed that you may want to duplicate this in your local church, so that's a powerful thing. We're welcome to do that. And there are more people in our group who can join that kind of a discussion. So we thank you very much for allowing us to be here and present. We hope that this is actually a discussion today, not just from people who are listening.
Excuse me, can you tell us who you are? I didn't step on, I came in a little late, somebody else asked. So
Sure.
Organization you went. Thank you. Can you talk a little louder?
Absolutely. My name is Brian Taylor. I'm with a group called Black Lives Matter Cincinnati, which I'll go into a little bit more what that is. Myself, I have a bit of history as a journalist and an activist, and born and raised in Cincinnati, moved around quite a bit and I'm back now. But it's not really about my personal story. But we can talk about that informally, or if people have questions and things like that.
And your colleague?
And my colleague,
Okay.
go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rashida Manuel. I'm also with Black Lives Matter Cincinnati, and I'm born and raised in Cincinnati. I'm just really passionate about issues of racial justice. I've worked on issues of reproductive justice in Cincinnati, and I am an educator. I've just graduated from UC, so I majored in women's studies, so I'm a feminist, and my feminist politics definitely influenced my anti-racist politics, so all of those things go together for me, and I'm just excited to be involved.
Could you say your name again, please?
Sure. My name is Rashida Manuel.
And everybody here should know that Rashida has spoken many times and is just as capable, probably more so than me, to speak here. It just so happens that I could be here for sure, and we had several people who was questionable. So in the discussion and questions, we'll both work together to help address any particular questions or comments that come from you guys. As some people here may know, 2 officers were shot and injured this morning during anti-cop brutality protests in Ferguson, Missouri. This is just days after the Department of Justice reports, which I'll probably refer to as DOJ in fast talk, but that's what that is, the Department of Justice, and resignations by Chief of Police there, Thomas Jackson, City Manager John Shaw, and 4 other government employees who either were fired or resigned. Despite the paralyzing effect this will have on some activists, this incident only heightens the need for protests to continue and to expand. It does not diminish the need for action. It raises its importance, because the longer we go without justice, without convictions of cops who kill black people, people who are differently able, Latinos, working class whites like we know Samantha Ramsey in Northern Kentucky, the more vigilante elements or even criminal elements not organized by activists will seek to take matters into their own hands. It is our work around the country in building a movement that has been able to channel some of the raw anger and frustration felt by many into a powerful, useful voice that has in fact prevented the kind of unorganized social explosion and acts like ones we've seen from happening on a wider scale, I believe. Protests have continued even after the Department of Justice reports have come out, because there's a common sentiment. And that sentiment is that the Department of Justice findings reveal what we've known and been saying all along. And actually, let me just pass out a few pictures. These are pictures of some of the people and faces that are in Ferguson, because that's also one thing that is often misportrayed. Who are the activists? Who are the people who are in the streets and protesting? It's people like us. It's people who work for a living. It's people who work at the restaurant down the street. It's people who work in government offices to some degree. It's people who are incensed, whose ethnicities go beyond just those who are affected in the sharpest way. But this DOJ report, like I was saying, it just confirms what we've been saying all along. Brutality does happen. Killings do happen. Unreasonable stops and searches of pedestrians or people driving do happen. Use of the false notion of resisting arrest to justify brutality, to cover it up, does happen at a staggeringly disproportionate rate for non-white individuals in the United States. This is a fact that, before this report, could be relegated to just what you're feeling. The percentage of those stopped for suspicion in reality have a higher rate, yield a higher rate of convictions for whites. And this is part of what the report says, but it's not about that. But it's just an important fact when you look at the disproportionate amount of people stopped. Another thing that came out is the revenues that come from these shakedowns that happen. In a city like Cincinnati, it's not as easy to see. It's not exactly in your face in the same way as it is in the city of New York or other places where there's a lot of pedestrian traffic and where we are forced to a certain degree to walk together and experience each other in our normal goings on. But when you have a situation where these revenues that come from, tickets, basically for walking while black or driving while black, constitute, and it's not just blacks, I'll come back to that, but constitute 20 to 25% of city income in some cities. Let that roll around in your head. That's a budgeted item. And it's the commodification of false crimes. It's the commodification of harassment. The turning of these things into a profitable part of an institution is inseparable from why we explain the institutional character of racism in this country. All these things confirm that racism is alive and well in the United States. But I want to make a little distinction, because I think two things are true at the same time. I would argue that racist attitudes among your average American, your average person who lives in the United States, is at a historical all-time low. While the institutionalized racism that we see, that is ingrained in police departments and court systems around the country, is as bad or worse than it was 50 years ago. These things are both simultaneously true, and it's part of the difficulty in navigating and explaining, not just for all of us, what the character of racism that we see in society is. And it's hard to see that these dual things are happening simultaneously. Okay, so in my opinion, the measures that came out of the Department of Justice report are cosmetic, by and large, are cosmetic thus far. Designed to cover up the real face of the police and the courts as institutions. Why do I say this? When these reports so specifically and in such a detailed way highlight some of these facts that I went over and many, many more. I encourage people to find, there's places online to discover and find this report, which is extensive and useful. Well, one indication is that despite all of this knowledge and all of these facts that are now not only things that, you know, oppressed people of color in the United States have been saying for a long time, now they're documented facts. They're things we've known for years, but still there are fewer convictions along these lines of police officers than I have on one hand, fingers. And the killings continued. So you have no convictions for the things that have already happened. Then you have this report that says, "Oh, this exists. You know, this is a problem." But then the killings continue in city after city. Some of the most recent ones: Antonio Zambrano, who is mentally disabled.